think it's day 8. I just woke up. I got a lot done yesterday and today. I started working on the React Native app. I also finished the API for our backend, our initial backend. I look scary right now. I guess that's what wake up face looks like. I went down and played with the scooter some more where it's being stored. I went through all of the electrical systems and figured out, what we have to interface with and what we have to do to make it work with our systems and our hardware. I ordered a hardware development kit to get started on what we need to get started on so that we can start building out the connectivity there. Things are going pretty fast. I think we'll be able to actually test usability in maybe like 2 weeks, maybe less. I think the branding for the scooter as well will be done either late today or tomorrow. I'll be able to apply it and this weekend take it out to a really popular place in Tacoma and see what demand is like. I'd like to vet the demand against the Bird and Lime scooters by placing this thing in the same area where people are pulling Bird and Lime scooters from and seeing if they have any interest or pick it over those. That would be a really good sign. The interest I've seen so far in it, just riding it, has been really, really reassuring. Today, for the rest of the day, the only thing I really have that I can work towards, that I have the things here to do, are working on the React Native app. So I'll show you guys sort of where it's at by the end of the day. I don't think it'll take more than 2 weeks or so to build it out. It's not a very complicated app. These apps in general for shared usage of scooters or bikes or whatever it may be are super simple, like dumb simple. There's only like 5 screens in them, which is great. So trying to move fast, trying to get these things out there, trying to test demand. And if we're lucky, we'll hit on something that people really like and we'll go and try and scale up as quickly from there and see what happens. But until we start testing demand, we won't know. And that's really the biggest blocker to really pushing forward with this is getting that last piece of data on whether or not this is something people would seriously use. So, all right.
Say hi. Yeah. Meow. Meow.
So, about, I think, 5 hours into the React Native app, I took a lot of the time to set up all the boilerplate and everything, get my environment set up, and also to come up with a general styling and feel for the application. I ended up going with the color red and made a little logo there. I like the color red. I didn't really see many in the scooter space right now that are using this scheme. I've seen Jump, which uses black and red, but I thought it'd be cool to take more of a YouTube color scheme. Sort of inspired me. It feels refreshing. It feels powerful, so sort of went with that. I got pretty much all the basics wired up in this first 6 hours. I have phone login working. I have login with Facebook working. Also, the initial onboarding flow. I always choose when I develop these sort of apps to make things as simple as possible for the users that are going to be using them, right? So making a really great first impression is super important. So you don't want them going through a really long onboarding flow. You want them to see the value in your service or your app as fast as possible, and getting them to that moment as quickly as possible is very important. So I can go ahead and enter a fake phone number right here. And we'll go ahead and hit next. It'll text a verification code, or a login code to whatever the number is you entered. This will basically create an account on our backend, associating your phone number with you as a real person. This prevents fake accounts from getting created when you do them based on phone numbers or based on Facebook accounts, because both of them are hard to spoof many instances of. I can enter a random code, 6-digit code, and it'll go ahead and continue. The next part, location permissions, already enabled, but I'll go ahead and click this and it's going to take us into the map screen, which I'm still working on now. I started working on just the different sort of cards for states of your ride.
So in this case, this card on the bottom here is what you would see during an active ride. The header up here, this will take you to account settings and details and whatnot. This will be sort of a help menu. The scooters have sport mode, so I thought it'd be cool to add sort of a little bit of a gimmick. We can do some cool stuff with the onboard motor controllers on these scooters, and oh yeah, you can actually see for the first time the types and what the look of these scooters is. They're pretty neat. I'll be riding one around tomorrow, I think, and filming that in a video, but you'll see more of them soon. So yeah, so these have sport mode. The onboard controllers in these things, we can sort of do some cool trickery and bypass them to make them accelerate a lot harder from a standstill without really damaging the motor. And it makes for a really fun ride. So these things, the motors in these things make about 70 foot-pounds of torque, and they weigh only about 90 pounds. So if you do the math on that, it's like a very intense power to weight ratio. It's enough where when I accelerate from a stop completely, I sort of feel like I'm getting pulled off of the seat a little bit. It's really, really fun. So that's what sport mode will enable. It'll also make the top speed of the scooter 20 miles an hour in the United States, which is what the limit is, or we can take these things all the way up to 35, but it's really dependent on local laws and whatnot, and that's what this will also limit by. If sport mode's off, we'll probably limit them to a safer cruising setting like 15 miles an hour top speed and maybe a much more sort of gentle acceleration. Yeah, so that's about where I'm at within 6 hours. Like I said, a lot of it was setting up boilerplate, getting styling together. The next 6 to 12 hours, I think, is really going to be when a bulk of the functionality and the different screens and different components and pieces of the app get finished.
So I got an update on the hardware kit for developing the hardware side of these. That'll be here on Wednesday, I think. So it gives a good amount of time between finishing up a majority of the mobile app, wiring it up to our backend and doing QA, to also being able to have time before Wednesday to drive the scooter around more, put some branding on it, and test demand. On Saturday, I'll be taking it down to what's called Ruston Way in Tacoma. It's a really popular spot on the water. A really big bike / walking path that I'll end up parking it at and seeing who walks up to it, who sees the branding on it, who tries to use it. It'll have a thing on the back or somewhere on the scooter saying text the number to use the scooter. And we'll be able to track the number of opt-ins and see who would actually have been interested in trying it, even though when they text that number, it's just going to fire back, say, hey, this scooter's reserved or in use or something like that. It's just a way to test demand as if it were actually there to see people will really use it. I think that's really all for updates. Most of the exciting stuff is really going to start happening, I think, over this weekend. Seeing that demand is really what's going to, I think, make or break this sort of idea. But just based on the response I've seen riding it around, like I've been saying, I think demand will probably be high. What I'm mainly curious about is if we park this thing next to a bunch of Lime scooters or Bird scooters, is this something that people will try and pick over those? And if it's a constant yes, then I think we really have something that's worth running with. If it's a constant most of the time, I still think it's worth running with. So we'll sort of see what that breaks down as. It'll be really interesting to see people's response. It's so out of the ordinary for an electric scooter that's legal on bikeways and roadways and everything else. The same legalities as the Bird and the Lime scooters. So yeah, I think that's all for today. Today's video's basically been a combination of, I think, day 8 and day 9. So I think we've made some really good progress within 9 days, right? So I started sort of looking into ideas. We tested a few basic things. We went ahead and I've talked a lot about my thought processes. We're still testing demand on these scooters, but I'm basically going off of a gut feeling right now based on the very minimal data I have in people's response to this thing, assuming that it will work. And there are many, 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 many times where I've been wrong. So it's possible I'll be wrong again, but if I was just waiting to test this thing over the weekend, I wouldn't be doing anything right now. And I would rather
refresh my coding skills and be working on something that I enjoy creating in the meantime. I really like making apps. So it gives me something to do, and if I am right, it also gets us ahead of the curve a little bit. So that is, I think, everything for today. And yeah, I'll try and make a really in-depth video over the weekend. And thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you get an update every time I post a video for the challenge. And yeah, thank you.